Hello, my name is Kalle and I'm the head distiller of the same company from Finland.
Yeah, so we are here today to convince all of you to love rye as much as we do, and to start seeing rye not as a monolithic entity, but see that there's all sorts of ryes all around the world, both from a grain perspective and especially from the perspective of how different distillers work with their rye. And we'll be here today to tell you a bit about our company, but even more about rye and how we process it. But just a few words. So let's just start from the fact that we come from a place with no heritage around fine spirits. We are a meat, potatoes, and vodka people. We are boring enough to select rye bread as our national food, which for me says that we have a special relationship with rye, and also about the other boring stuff about the food culture, but we are here to change it, and this is our founding team from the distillery. We took this picture way back when we were starting, and we were asked to be a part of a book on Finnish whiskey. We didn't have a distillery, we didn't have really anything, we just had the team, we had rye, and we had some vision that there's a better future out there. So here you are, and one must suffer for your arts. I can tell you that. But the team has grown since the start in 2014, and I'll speak a bit more about the company later on. But I'd just like to insert my hot, or at least mild take on the previous speech, that we actually, this team is our entire team, including our visitor center team. We had 13,000 people at our visitor center last year, and we can't sell any bottles out because we're in Finland and it's a retail monopoly country. So like everybody leaves empty-handed, but they're still happy. So there you go. So, Kalle, right.
Okay, so let's go to the history of rye a little bit. So, Finland has a very long history with the rye. It actually was introduced to Finland 500 before Christ. The reason why rye could survive in Finland was mainly due to its qualities, which are one of the main things is a good cold resistance. Also one important part of cultivating rye in northern is that it's, or in northern it's always winter rye, meaning it's sown in the autumn time. And you can imagine cold, long Finnish winter. It goes on and on. You don't have any grain left. You should preserve your grain for sowing for the next harvest. That wouldn't happen. So basically all the crops cultivated in Finland were winter rye, winter barley, and so on. So the good cold resistance of rye, and it's especially good quality in growing actually in fertile soil, and then in a long, short growing season, were the main reasons that the rye was first introduced to Finland. But then in the 19th century, or actually starting already in 18th century, it became the dominant crop in Finland. So most of the fields were cultivating rye. And actually the Finnish rye was very popular in that time, not only in Finland, but all over Europe, due to these qualities, because the Finnish rye, especially actually, we didn't plan that, but actually from the region where we come from Vaasa region, the Vaasa rye was very famous because it had such a good cold resistance. So if it could survive in Finland, it could survive anywhere in Europe. So people really bought it from Finland to Poland, to other parts of Europe for sowing. It also had a very good resistance for infections. Maybe it's due to the fact that the rye has a huge genome. It's 3 times as big as the human genome. But of course, the rye at the end of 19th century started to lose its dominance in Finland, due that even though it was a very reliable crop, but the harvest sizes weren't that big. So when the better breeding techniques came in, other grains took over. But still today, in Finland, we have a very special relationship with the rye. Myself, I remember rye bread from the time when I was only like 4 or 5 years old. We Finns to have summer cottages. So we drove to my grandfather's summer cottage, 2 hours drive, and just 5 kilometers before the summer cottage there was a rye bakery producing amazing rye bread. So we drove there first, all the kids in the backseat like, oh, I'm hungry, when are we going to be at the mökki? And then we stop at the rye bakery, buy a butter cheese. You can taste it if you want, yeah. And eat it right away. Only afterwards I've actually understood that it wasn't due that we were so hungry that we ate the rye bread right away. It was warm and good. But when we went to the summer cottage, my grandfather was really cheese-sparing person, or let's say rice-sparing person. So when we came in, handled the bread him, we wouldn't eat that. All the old bread should be eaten first, and not the fresh one, because we still have some bread in the shelves. And like Miika said, we chose for the 100 years of independence, we had a vote. What's the national dish of Finland by the Finns? Rye bread, and that's exactly the rye bread you are having there. To tell this, I tried to bring you the idea that why we actually went all the way and chose rye to be the backbone of our distillery. And I hope you understand it a little bit better. So, something about the taste qualities of the Nordic rye. We have a short growing season, a lot of light, not so high temperatures, producing a lot of aromatics in it. What we use as a rye is also smaller grain size, meaning we have comparatively less starch than the husk, or it's a naked grain, so the outer part of the grain. So where the taste lies in rye, it's in the other parts of the grain, and therefore the crop we are using has extremely much of this intense, big, spicy, bold rye taste. And our process is all about respecting this bold taste and how we can get that one into the whiskey.
So now something more about our distillery. So we are located in this fantastic old stone dairy in the northwestern bits of Finland. Not the way up north. Finland is a very long country. I think our land mass is about the size of Germany, but we have 5.3 million people, so there's absolutely nobody anywhere. There's just lakes and forest. But as Kalle said, we really wanted to choose the rye as the backbone of the company, and that's like choosing only one cereal. It's starting to make us really good in working with that cereal and really preserving the core taste in there. But back to the formation of the company. So this is the place where we're at. It's a dairy founded in 1908. we are still a fairly backward country, but we don't dress like this anymore. So this is a slightly older picture. But it sort of lived through a couple of iterations of its life already. So it was a dairy at one point in time. It was the dairy in Finland producing a cheese called Oldermanni. You wouldn't know it unless you're a very, very big fan of bland cream cheese. But the current iteration of the life of the distillery basically began in 2013 when we started building our distillery there. And in our founding story, I think there's a couple of crucial elements. It's just 5 of us friends drinking rye whiskey in a sauna and wondering why a nation of rye is not making whiskey out of rye. Why do we stick with rye bread and rye porridge and rye basically everything else except spirits? And then we decided to start making whiskey and start also, can I mention the G word here, gin? We are more known for our rye gins at the moment, but everything we do is 100% out of whole grain rye, so all grains in method, and we don't take away anything from the core taste of the rye, but Kalle will tell you guys more about that when we go into the process.
Good. Okay, yeah. So we are not only rye distillery, we are nowadays also single malt rye distillery. So what we use for producing is called pot still rye. Of course, we have a smoked variety of that one, not a peated, but smoked, with other wood. And the pot still rye comes from Finnish maltery Viking malt. We fooled them to produce the rye malt in the first place, telling them very, very optimistic projections how much rye malt we need. And now we are come to the point what we promised in the first year, 2014. It's mainly actually one, like I said earlier, it's like a specific rye that we are using for the rye malt. It's a population rye called Reetta, Marguerite Reetta, a Finnish version, Finnish population rye. And like I said earlier, it has a very much smaller grain size than most of the other rye crop, rye breeds we are having in Finland. So our process, like Miika said, it's all grains in method. We heard in this good talk earlier, another way how you can process rye is using a mass filter, for instance. But for us, we chose to go the way that we don't separate anything from the process before the first distillation. So basically, our process starts with the hammer milling, mashing in. We have a mash conversion vessel. We cool it down in the same vessel because obviously it's not a clear word, but it's a rye slurry. Very tasty, sweet, and very high viscosity in it as well. So we cool it down in the mash conversion vessel to the fermentation temperature. And like we heard from the previous talk, we also see that the fermentation is one of the key points in the making of whiskey and building up the aromas. We, however, have chosen to cap the fermentation temperature. We get enough high for a lot of aroma building, but we don't let it go all the way high, keeping also the yeast happy in the fermentation. And we use a fairly long fermentation time. Not to get additionally to the alcoholic fermentation and natural lactic acid fermentation in the end, build up even more esters in the process. But why we chose to use this all grains in method? Well, one reason was practical, but the other reason was we wanted to keep all the flavors of the rye in the process. And also, one was also the yield. So, the good part in using all grains in, meaning when we mill it and it's in a mash tun or mash conversion vessel and we cool it down, the enzymes which are present in the malt are still present in beginning of the fermentation. So if there is some residual starch from the mashing, those get converted to sugars in the beginning of fermentation as well. The other upside comes in the distillation, whereas also the downside, because everyone who has distilled with all grains in know that it might be messy in the pot still distillation. But we also get all the flavors out. Everything what can be distilled from the rye will be also in our low wines. So we use pot still distillation, double distillation to get all the aromas out what we want to. For the second distillation, we still keep the same methodology. Let's do as white cuts as possible. So to get the intense rye taste to our new make, we do as white cuts as possible, starting from 75, going down to 60, with the peated one a little bit lower even. So we try to get all the oiliness, all the oily rye to our new make as well.
So coming back to the team that makes this stuff and sort of some of the surreal things that are going on there. We've started 4 years ago down this track. Well, where really Kalle moved over and started to build the distillery in 2013. So it's now almost 5 years. But it's been quite the journey since then. And a lot of this process, having been cooked up on the way, it still just adheres to one basic principle. It needs to be all about rye. And whether it's in the process or in the maturation. So we won't talk about maturation now so much. It's coming up in the next presentation. But just a word on what's going on there. So we in Finland, of course, we experience a wide variety of different temperatures. Our region, despite being fairly close to the coast, is very dry. We go from minus 30 Celsius to plus 30 Celsius. And weirdly enough, the thing we had to do is put in a cooling system because of Finnish law. So we can't let the warehouse just do its job. We need to have do some of the regulators' job for the whiskey as well. But yeah, so that's it about maturation. But now a word about how we see rye in the future. So you just heard our very particular way of working with rye. You've heard about how Finnish rye itself as a grain is a bit different. And we are different, but we don't proclaim to be best or anything. So there's a wide variety of different ryes all around the world. And there's even a wider variety of ways of working with rye. And we think that's an awesome thing. It's great to hear and see and taste ryes coming out of Scotland, England, different sort of varieties coming over from US, Canada, and we know that there's even a bit of rye cooking now in Japan. So I think the world of rye is looking intensely interesting in the future. So as I said in the beginning, I think it's time we start letting go of a monolithic concept of rye. And I think we here are in a very good position to start that work properly on its way. So why hasn't it happened before? And this is my take on the US market, and there might be people who disagree, but we see a lot of US rye modern US rye culture coming from two actual manufacturing sources, Alberta and MGP. And that doesn't necessarily lend itself to a wide variety of ryes coming up in the market, although we see a wide variety of stories coming up in the market. And that's its own thing, and I think all of us in this room have a very distinct opinion about it. But since, especially in Europe right now, we have so many different sort of distilleries with different philosophies and different grain strains producing rye, I think this is the start of something that might end up looking a bit like Scottish single malt in the sense, or single malt, the world of single malt in general. Whereas you'd have your Islay and Speyside, you'd have your Japan, you'd have your continental European single malts, or whatever. So I think in rye in the future, that's something that not only we could, but I think we should see. That there would be, in addition to the ones actually registered already, like Empire Rye in New York or London by the guys over at the LLC, we might see Nordic Rye, we might see French Rye, we might see a wide variety of ryes coming up and being very distinctive in their style of what they are, what the taste profile is. And I think that's, from a consumer perspective, from the perspective of the person ultimately enjoying the drink, I think that's a hugely interesting thing, but it requires a lot from everybody in this room who is interested in making rye or making rye already, to really get the communication out, to define your style, to create your mission, and to make sure that people out in the world understand it. But that's the take on rye we have from Kyrö Distillery Company back in Finland. And you come and talk to me and Kalle, you contact any of our team, or come and stop by in the northwest coast of Finland. We'll always welcome you all to our visitor center where we can't sell you booze.
We'll just have to do kind of microphone juggling. Thanks very much, guys. It's fantastic. I'm glad you kept it closed on, though. I was worried for a wee minute there. A couple of questions just to kick off with this. You were saying that rye was kind of monolithic in its. Was that in terms of processing, or do you think that was just in the way that people perceived rye? That you only had tried one particular rye whisky, and that was what they believed was the true style. Can you just maybe expand on that a bit?
I think from the market perspective, definitely rye hasn't been monolithic in the sense that Canadian rye has been around from a production perspective. But I think right now when you see rye coming up, especially in the US and now in increasing amounts in Europe, you would generally put your bullets in with your mixtures and your fuse in with your Jim Beam ryes, and that's the sort of still the market perception of rye, and I think that's the thing that needs to change and has a bigger chance of changing going forward.
What was your inspiration then? Actually, can you hear me? Okay, fine. Yes, I'll just shout this out. Okay. So, what was your inspiration then? I mean, you wanted to make rye, so you said, okay, I've tasted this rye whiskey. I like rye whiskey, but I want to do it differently. So what was that intellectual process?
So Kalle can talk more about the production, but for me it was the whiskey show in 2011, and I stumbled on the stand of Drew Mayville from Buffalo Trace, and he had me taste Thomas H. Handy, and I knew nothing about rye whiskies before, and that's when the lightning struck. Like I was just, that morning I was missing my rye bread, and there it is. The rye is beautiful. Why isn't this happening all over? And that was sort of my inspiration for it. But if you can say a word about the production.
Well, first of all, of course, in the beginning we started to investigate how to make rye, and actually it came in very beginning the idea: if we do it out of rye, why wouldn't we do it 100% rye? And that became also like a challenge because there weren't that many examples to look up to and say go there and look how they do the process, but it was more like gathering information bits from there and there and there, putting it all together to our kind of process. And we wanted to, from the very beginning, make a whiskey that couldn't be more Finnish in our what we perceive as Finnish. It has to be rye, and like the rye bread you had, 100% rye. Did that.
Well, were you deliberately making life difficult for yourself?
Yes.
So we sort of reverse engineered the wrong sort of decision tree, like if you're gonna make whiskey, don't make it in a dark monopoly controlled market. If you're gonna make whiskey, don't make it out of rye. If you're gonna make it out of rye, don't make it 100%. And like all of them, the wrong strand.
But for a throw, just kind of continue. Forgive me, folks. Do you think that perhaps typifies a 21st century whiskey maker? That sort of thinking of, okay, let's try and push it out. You just heard easy saying, I want to push it out. I want to think expansively and not think about restrictions. Just say, right, what the hell, let's go for it.
Yeah, I guess like Ian said, at no point were we thinking about yield levels or any sort of process efficiency per se. We just started out with the pure. We say it's like the soul of the whole thing. And I think we also think that is something that is strong enough to drive a movement amongst people enjoying whiskey, rather than going at it from a production technical perspective.
Questions from the floor about rye? Anybody? Paul? Our potential murderer? Or maybe
It's a hearing that I have potentially a murderous vibe to me that is the first, that'll be a nice pick too. So Matt Hoffman from Westland. First of all, I just want to say that was awesome, and I just love hearing the way you guys talk, because that's the sort of vibe that we get down with too. So my main question is, what's next for you guys? You guys have intense focus on trying to make a rye whiskey, because to you, rye whiskey means making the most authentically Finnish whiskey possible. So when it comes to innovation and pushing forward, what do you want to do now?
Well, I think we will keep making rye whiskey. Now we will have some samples here, but making whiskey is a long process, and we will try to be better in making the rye whiskey we want to make. So if I would have the same speeds of our process in 5 years' time, it would have been completely different. Probably I would point out completely different parts. So from the process we have still a lot of things to learn. And well, like I mentioned, we also use a smoke that's like a unique type of smoke in Finland, which we use traditionally to dry actually the rye grain, and it's using actually alder smoke instead of peat. We might see also peated rye in the future as well. We come from Finland, and we have huge areas of moors in Finland, so there's a very different kind of peat in Finland, and we will play around with that one. On the whiskey side, innovation, it's an ongoing process all the time we try out different, and we are only now like really getting into the maturation phase. We work it out, most of the steps in the actual like process of fermentation and distillation. We still play around with different kind of yeasts, strains, and now the real work with the maturation is actually only getting started. So there's plenty of to be done in terms of improving and making the rye whiskey even better.
I think if I expand just a bit beyond whiskey, why we initially got into this thing is of course the rye being the linchpin of it all, but we really love like great taste combined with great stories, and that's how we sort of, the finishness came combined with the rye in the beginning. So everything we do is out of rye. We make rye gins, and we're just releasing rye bitters, and why would we sort of branch out into other categories is that we find a story that tickles us in some way, and we decided that, okay, berries and botanicals are fantastic in Finland as well, you know, the clean natures and everything. So we came up with an idea that we should have something for bitter beginnings and bitter endings of anything. And we started creating a clear bitter, like a completely distilled bitter, and then a bitter with components coming only from underground, to sort of signify the beginning and the end. So these are the sort of stories we pursue, and then everything just needs to be on a rye base, 100% Finnish whole grain rye. That's the only rule, our dogma that we have.
Dogma again. Great. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Actually, if it's okay, 2 questions. Can you talk a little bit about maturation, how you do that, and release strategy, what you're thinking about releases is, when and how and what you're maturing in. And then the second question is, you guys had a huge success with your gin, and as somebody who's also doing gin as well as whiskey, it's interesting to hear how you sort of were able to reconcile that success and while you're still trying to lay down stock, and how you manage the 2 things together.
Maturation.
Yeah, for maturation we've actually chosen to use mainly American oak because with our rye profile it builds up very nice aromas together, and we use mainly virgin American oak, but then also ex-bourbon. Mainly 200 liter at this point. In the very beginning, we started with the small ones, and we came with this problem that in a small cask, some processes do happen quite quickly, and others go in the same pace than in a bigger one. So finding out the balance in the small ones is fairly, it's more tricky than with smaller, bigger casks, and we are still playing around with them, but at this point we use New American Oak, ex-bourbon, a combination of these.
So on the release schedule and the whole bit of reconciling gin and whiskey, I mean, we haven't really done it yet. We haven't gone through the reconciliation process because we did everything in a 1,200 liter Cotswolds still to start with. It was really problematic for gin and really problematic for whiskey, but you know, it was, from our monetary perspective, it was the only compromise we could have. But then the gin took off, and in a monopoly country, when you're listed in the national monopoly, you feed the beast. There's no other option how to do it. So we kept on making gin, and then we made gin and more gin. So we really killed our whiskey production for a while. Eventually, in 2016, end of 2016, we managed to separate the production lines, and now we have the whiskey going on in a line with 3,000 liter wash still and a 1,500 liter spirit still, and the gin still is on its own. But we are really anxious to get that stock out in suitable quality and balance, of course. But also we subscribe to the mentality that we love talking to people who enjoy the spirits. And we try to communicate everything in a way that we say, like, okay, our process towards our first steady state whiskey is one step here, then a step here. So we are still searching for our final profile, which will be ready somewhere end of 2020. But it's still a long journey. But meanwhile, we're happy to make even more gin.
I'm just intrigued. One of your last comments there was about rye getting made, regional styles beginning to develop, etc., etc. And there does seem to be a genuine rye revolution going on in the world, which is great.
Revolution.
Yeah, rye. It's good.
We're in the land of puns.
I'm just wondering, because I was thinking back to what was happening in Scotland, and that fact that everybody was going, well, we're making rye, we're the first. Oh no, actually, we're doing it. There seems to be very little sharing of information within Scotland. Nobody actually knew that the distillery next door was making rye whisky. I mean, how much information is now being shared between yourselves and distillers in Canada and whatever? And if it's not, what do we do to try and get these channels of communication open?
We could suggest that we come here to the World Whisky Forum and speech how we do the rye whisky. So we are kind of open for the sharing, and I bet we are going to have very good conversations afterwards with the other rye distillers in this room as well.
I think even in North America, the ones who actually have their own production, from your elder statesmen in Hotalings to newer in New York Distilling and elsewhere. So I think it's a very, very open game, and I think it's a very communal business to be in, especially on the production side. The marketeers then can go butt heads out in the market, but on the production side, we welcome everyone. So like Basti from Spreewald was at our distillery while we were at a festival. He found it in the USA, so we went sort of other ways.
He sneaked in.
Yeah. no, it was actually an agreed visit, and we were going to have the Stowning guys visit and all of that. So we are absolutely open for collaboration, because we feel that when we go into this world where you have strong identities, not just one monolithic concept, I think there's a whole lot of room to play out in.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we look forward to next year's Rye Whisky Forum.
Oh, please have us.
The revolution is starting here, guys. Thank you so much.